The Tech Utopia Fantasy is Over by Ava. Let's dig into this. Growing up, there was a more positive view of tech. The future looked awesome. Media showing how the future could look like had amazing ideas about how tech could help us and look cool doing it. It was all about comfort, less work, personalized assistance, reducing friction, hassle, unconventional designs, and improved materials. Comfort and less work. So this is what you're aiming for, okay? The ads were painting a bright future with glossy robots, blinking data centers, transhumanist image of cyborg-esque humans. This is what you wanted. Ava, is this what you wanted? An age of knowledge and connection, productivity and ease. We didn't have to think about how it was made, who would lose their job over it. When was this ever a thing? When was this ever a vision? How it would be profitable? What? This isn't how business works. You want to make money doing a job that, of course, you're going to have to be concerned how something is profitable. Like you might not be into the weeds as much as other people that are dealing with the financials and product direction, but how it would be repaired or recycled if broken, how much energy it would use, or what rare materials it would need. It was just cool. So essentially, do you want to live in a bubble and just completely disassociate from reality? Like, this is never going to be a thing. This was, I think maybe like if you get lost in a movie, a futuristic movie, it doesn't go over the inner workings of how a company works within that movie. You don't like see how everything's interconnected in the world, but like, it is. Like, this is still a thing. Then came social media and smartphones. A lot of tools in one. How convenient. How amazing to have the ability to record audio or take pictures while being so affordable. Now, even poor people or people in poor countries could access the internet and some valuable education unrestricted by their environments. I don't know if we had this view organically or if it was pushed on us by the tech companies in interviews and posts, but I distinctly remember this view that this would make society better, that it would be a big step forward for humankind. I think technology has always pushed that. Technology leaders have always pushed that. And I do think there is a problem with progressing technology further, which probably puts a lot of money in people's pockets as like always being better for humankind. I do believe this has been misleading. I agree with that. The interconnection was presented as the ability to finally collaborate knowledge more quickly and enter a new knowledge era. The ability to produce and share your own content and become a star overnight online without casting managers and directors or record studios emboldened the idea of pulling yourself up by the bootstraps of geographically unlimited American dream. This is like an illusion. And I think most people understood that this was an illusion. You're not like, you have this opportunity with grinding. Like, you're seeking out comfort and less work. You're not going to achieve this. Why would you expect everyone to achieve this with kind of what seems to be your ideal? A star overnight. Like, I guess you get this in movies. I don't think it's like technology leaders pushing this. I think it's movies. I think it's just... It's movies. It's Hollywood pushing this crap. It's not a lot of your technology leaders. You might get some that will kind of paint a vision for investors and the public, but like a lot of times it's Hollywood pushing this crap. Everyone could suddenly be rich or become educated, more free time, more money, more means for people to lead their economic class upward and have financial freedom. And we do have that. The option of having communication channels outside of journalism and documentaries was portrayed as more uncensored, as authentic or fringe voices were being heard, documenting events live that would have maybe never been reported on otherwise. There was This is all happening. There was this idea that it would somehow severely reduce or end xenophobia and racism, as we would all suddenly be able to interact with each other globally and learn that the others weren't so bad. A very simplified, almost childlike view of racism. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But that's a Hollywood vision. I don't remember in my time this being pushed that heavily, where like you are expecting this utopia, this perfect vision of humanity that just never has any conflict or war or differences or troubles in their life. Like I don't think myself or anyone ever took that seriously. There'd be clean energy, a solution for climate change. Poverty would be solved. Ideally, we would now all come together and create something big while overcoming limits of bigotry. Is this focused on bigotry? Like, where's this article going? And the tech companies were all just there to facilitate that for the greater good, right? But is that true? No. I guess some people believe this. They're still evoking this image. They're ads featuring grandparents who don't have to feel alone because a family can video call, which is true. That can be helpful. But again, there's a disconnect in the way that we connect with each other in technology. Like it doesn't, I don't know if it's like a biochemistry thing, but we don't get the same satisfaction as if we were in person communicating with that person and creating, memories with that person in person. It is different. Or students quickly find out facts for their assignment, neighborhoods organizing via their platforms. Like this stuff is happening. The image of tech enhancing the family life with grocery lists and drawings and games for the family. This is all happening. Never mind that most of these are pretty dystopian. I don't think half of what you're saying is dystopian. I'm going to keep reading for a bit. I want to get a bigger picture of where she's going with this. If you sit and think on it, but more people are picking up on it now as it gets more overt, more apparent that the marketing people and higher ups in tech seem to live in a bubble detached from the reality of millions, not realizing that a spot featuring how AI is writing the fan letter for a child is not cute, not innovative, or something to strive for. Okay, we're in agreement there. I do think the internet and tech managed to hit some of the advantages and goals. So far, it did facilitate more political knowledge and resistance. Something tells me that this is going to be pretty politically motivated. Circumvented government censorship, let people meet and change each other's lives who would have likely never met otherwise. Help to gather knowledge, gave better access to scientific studies, papers, statistics, and culturally important media. Help piracy and archiving efforts, and gave disabled and chronically ill more options to socialize. Just to name a few things. And there was a really cool story that I saw. I'm bringing up a cool story, but I'm forgetting it at the same time. But there was someone that was disabled. I don't know if they were in a wheelchair or what, but WoW and Blizzard has brought up stories of people building friendships online through the World of Warcraft. And I know for some of you, it sounds really nerdy, but they would illustrate examples of this happening where people who normally would be rejected by society and would be had massive fear going out in public would build some kind of connection with people, which I think is really cool. And I do think technology does enable some of that. Now, is it depended on too often by people that don't need that should be outside, should be socializing in person? Yes. And that, technology is a double-edged sword in many different ways, but it has enabled some of that stuff. And I agree. That's pretty cool. But in my view, those positives are increasingly being overshadowed. What about the goal of coming together to share knowledge and help everyone get better access to education? I think that's happened. I think education has gotten cheaper. Alternative education has gotten cheaper. Coding bootcamp industry filled a niche for a while. And even just talking about the dev world, and there are a lot of self-taught curriculums that are pretty well developed that are providing education at a much cheaper rate to people that want to become web developers rather than getting a CS degree. I think a lot of that has happened. I think the internet undeniably helped with Wikipedia, YouTube tutorials, specialized blogs, forums, and more, but now the forums of specialized indie websites and blogs have been dying and are strongly deprioritized by search engines, therefore hard to find. What? Gripes of independent site owners with Google? I think it's because a lot of independent site owners aren't really familiar with content generation, or like, I think there are a lot of problems with independently owned sites. I don't think like Google has purposefully deprioritized independently owned sites. I think a lot of people are just really bad at SEO and content creation and creating good articles that are meaningful and helpful and useful and well organized. And I don't know. I guess I'd have to look into that a bit. But I've lost my place already. 11. We are at 11. Perfect. Informational posts on social media are walled off behind login screens. So what? So it's like it's to cut anonymity. Like it's to cut a lot of trolls and bots. I think this is okay. So when I say like, okay, so being able to view content, I can understand. Being able to post content, it should be walled off. Like if you want anonymity, I think there are websites and platforms for that, but I think you have to understand why platforms are going to gatekeep the conversation a bit. That just a big problem is bots, and it is providing authenticity. Because I do think that will improve the quality of conversation. But in terms of like blocking social media off by a login screen, that's more due to privacy concerns. Like that's more privacy policies getting pushed out in different countries. And, you know, a lot of countries in Europe are really big on this, right? Where a lot of these social platforms require or might be required by default to set strict privacy restrictions where you can unlock those restrictions if the user does that. Like LinkedIn is really like it defaults to a lot of like privacy first policies where you could start unlocking that and making your profile more public. But I do agree where I think that's not tech related. I think that's more politics, right? At the same time, it is a top breeding ground for disinformation, which could be filtered out by a login for people. The word disinformation is so overused. And I find like, even if because this article is going to get political, like it's obvious. Disinformation happens on both sides. And I find that the disinformation is overused because it's often used whenever someone disagrees with your point or provides an alternative viewpoint where you are arrogant enough to, even though you're not specialized or an expert in that area, you trust your sources to provide the correct information, when we just have a research problem. We have a problem where people aren't thoroughly vetting what they're saying online. My headset just went out. I got to wait for it to restart. Throws me off every time. But I feel like the word disinformation is used often to tell the other side that their viewpoint, their take is disinformation, and they continue spreading it. But I find so much arrogance. Like people are latching, like even if we go to mainstream news sites like Fox, like CNN, like there's disinformation on both sides. There's biases on both sides. And that kind of gets spread down, kind of like even just, what would you call it? Like a Chinese telephone where it's just, it gets spread to the next person, it gets spread to the next person, where some people aren't even listening to these mainstream news stations, these sources that they apparently trust directly, where the information just starts warping and warping and warping as it gets spread throughout the family and your friends. And did you hear about this? And that person never looks it up. They never validate it. Like this, I want to see where this is going politically, because I think with what I've seen so far, it's probably going to be politically motivated. But this happens definitely on both sides. And I want to see if this person acknowledges that. Aided by AI that hallucinates information. Yes, you shouldn't trust AI. Together with a fake news president. Oh, Jesus. I should have just kept reading. Fake news president. When was this article written? November. Is this Donald Trump? Just say Donald Trump. Is that what you're saying? Fake news president. Are you talking about Biden? I don't even know at this point. I've seen our time described as a post-truth era. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It is for who has the most power and money to decide what the truth is. I would agree with that. I mean, like that is a problem with like a lot of mainstream stations, but it's, you know, contrary to kind of what you pushed that was supposed to be the utopia of people not having gatekeepers of being able to deliver information. You want that, right? Where we don't have publishers and stuff like that blocking us, but now you're saying, oh, there's too much fake news. It's like, what the fuck do you want? You're not going to have both. You're going to have some disinformation if you want to knock out those gatekeepers. How about the bootstrap mentality? The internet has undoubtedly made people rich or well off who wouldn't otherwise be, but it's apparent that these are often people accused and sometimes convicted of sexual... Jesus. Okay. I'm just going to say essay, because I don't want this to get demonetized. Essay, harassment, abusing their employees, wage theft, tax fraud, and other crimes. Okay, so I just want to summarize this. The internet has undoubtedly made people rich or well off who may wouldn't otherwise be. So essentially, not people that have been handed wealth, but you're talking about people that have earned that wealth. You think that often, like most of those people are convicted of essay, harassment, wage, like crimes, like real legitimate crimes. Like all these people that have worked to earn, they're not handed down, they earn what they're getting. All these people are being convicted of this? Where do you get your sources? Okay, I'm not going to have time to view all the sources, but I'm going to link this article. You guys are welcome to look into it and let me know. But this seems a little bit delusional. I'm kind of detecting some like anti-capitalism. There are people who need to game the attention economy by increasing disrespectful and shocking content, gore, rage bait, dehumanizing pranks, extreme consumerism like huge shopping hauls, sloppy large mukbangs, shredding Lamborghinis. We're on the same page. There's a lot of garbage content. We're on the same page with that. Gambling streams and websites, game shows, and more. I think we're on the same page with this. And you are right. And it's, you know, it's not... I mean, it's gaming the attention economy, and I do like what you pointed out here, right? This is humanity. A lot of people don't like this. They don't want to admit this, but a lot of people will talk about like, you know, just gaming the algorithm and, you know, just tricking people and getting their attention. This is humanity. These algorithms are highly influenced by what people care to watch. It is the people, it is humanity deciding to watch these things and engage with these things. Now, you can be upset with that, but you are also delusional if you do not realize this is us. This is built into us. Whether we need to change this or not, this is humanity. So you need to be very, I think a lot of people need to be very self-aware that humanity is not, it's not that we are not perfect beings by any means. And our brains are very easily manipulated by a lot of shocking stuff, a lot of things that invoke our emotion, that spark, like trigger that dopamine. We are easily manipulated, but also humanity likes darker things than you realize. Like sometimes people have this like dreamy vision of humanity, and you just have not experienced the world yet. Which is why I understand why some people do become black-pilled in their lives, because they will only focus on the breadth of really crappy parts of humanity. We have the good and we have the bad, but dude, this is just humans being humans, whether you like that or not. And they have to do that to sell us products. We don't need banking on our insecurities. We've created an internet economy that incentivizes the worst in humanity for clout or money. The internet is just another tool to do that, but this has always been true for marketing in general. It's always been true. Educational content is still there, but everything is getting increasingly more paywalled. Scientific data is still harder to access and read. A lot of it is paywalled. The sensational rage bait articles are freely accessible, but the thorough analysis and takedowns are restricted. That is fair. I wish there would have been more, like a lot of the research articles going on in Purdue, I wish would have been publicly accessible. We got access to it being students, but that is true. Archives get taken down. Wayback Machine. People are less willing to upload content for free. That's because everyone wants to become a content creator. Everyone wants to become famous, a YouTuber, right? Like you hear about kind of a lot of teenagers that are polled that a lot of people just want to become famous. They want to become a YouTuber. But in reality, they want to become a YouTuber. I feel like back in my day, a lot of people wanted to become an actor and actress. I think a lot of people just want that fame. And we're starving for attention in high school or, in their childhood or for whatever reason. A lot of people do seek out fame because they think it's going to gain them a variety of different things. We're not going to get into that. But this has always been a thing. The internet does make it easy and it makes it more accessible. But again, you wanted this, right? This was your utopia of not having these gatekeepers. And when you give more access to people, all you're doing is hearing their voices and seeing how they're going to act on the internet with access to everyone. This is technology. It enables some of this at a much larger extent, which I think we would agree on some stuff where this is not good for humanity. And there are vulnerable people. And I would argue there are more and more vulnerable people that have basically had their brains manipulated for a long time, but also technology and just even user research that has been done, and now AI that can empower marketing tools can really pinpoint exactly what it takes to manipulate us even more. Like, I do think this is a real problem. Educational content is still there. Nope, I skipped that. Archives get taken down. There's Patreon, Udemy, and Skillshare, and more. You get a snippet, but the rest is in their $199 course. I mean, this is just part of being a content creator. And like, I don't know what to tell you, but you don't deserve someone's time, and they deserve to get paid for it. So there are people that'll go like hardcore free education and making education more accessible. But the fact that, like, here's the thing, they might charge for this $199 course, but versus 20 years ago, you have way more access to everything in this course for free than you did 20 years ago. You just have to piece it together. This person is curating their knowledge, but you have access to it for free. This is still free. You're paying for a curation of this content. And good for them for charging for their time. If they're going to spend the time curating this content, good for them. Some of them are surely good and worth it, but it's still a shame that we have to do this when we are sold on a free future. But you do have a free future. You just want to be lazy about it. You have this education accessible, but it takes searching. It takes a lot of searching, and you want to be lazy about it. Like, do you expect all this curated information that's going to transform your life to be just handed to you on a platter? Like, what is this? You have it. You have free education. You can learn almost anything you want to learn on the internet. Hell, now you can even use AI for free to learn a lot of knowledge. And now, should you trust that knowledge in the near future? Not necessarily. You're going to have a lot of hallucinations. A lot of the user feedback fucks with the data, but you have this. You just have to invest time into learning this. You have all of this. You're arguing like against curated content of people trying to make a living. And I would argue like some people have made an excessive living. And if you want to argue that, that's fine. Maybe you're anti-capitalist, but you have this. Like, you're just wrong with this. In times where many people can't even afford proper food. Again, you have this. What about xenophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination and bias? People are perceived as being more polarized and extreme. There's a talk of echo chambers and divided nations. I have a feeling you're in an echo chamber. Comment sections are often toxic and full of hate speech. What do you define as hate speech? I want to hear that. I think what people define as hate speech, and I want to see the lower bounds of it. What is the threshold for you to start labeling something as hate speech? I think that says a lot about a person. I would really love, because I know this is probably a link to someone else talking about it, but where's your threshold? Members of oppressed groups are bullied off of platforms. Who is being bullied off of what platforms? What oppressed groups are being bullied off of platforms? Ads used online have been shown to be discriminatory because certain groups of people are specifically targeted and shown different prices, worse job offers, or similar things. Yes, they always have been. They're discriminatory based off of demographics, because statistically, people of different demographics are going to buy things differently. They're going to go about their lives in different ways. This is a real thing, but are you targeting if you want to have this big battle against marketing, I think I'm with you. But now you're also grouping kind of open platforms where you don't want any gatekeepers. You don't want any gatekeepers. You think everything should just be accessible. But then when you are inevitably going to get some bigoted people, now you want it gatekept. I just don't know what you want. I don't you just seem scattered and all over the place, and just you keep coming back to xenophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination and bias. What is the point of this? But again, I think I learned a lot about people when they kind of talk about that initial threshold of hate speech. But this comes off as you're kind of in your own progressive echo chamber. And I think you are, I can't think of the word. I think you're being dramatic about it, is for a lack of better words. I think you are over dramatizing kind of some of this. And I don't think what you're saying and what you're wanting is even congruent with this utopia that sold you in tech in the first place. See, this is where a lot of people just live in their ideals. And their utopia just is not based in reality. It's not logical. A lot of your decisions are going to be a double-edged sword. They're going to have positives and negatives to it. Everyone wants the positives of their perfect utopia and completely disregard all of the negatives. And so when you continue to share your ideals in this way and not acknowledge that what you want is contradictory to what you want over here, you just sound like you're virtue signaling. It comes off as useless, and it comes off as kind of putting yourself on a high platform, talking about all these people, all these companies that are doing all these bad things. You just sound preachy and obnoxious. And that's what happens when you virtue signal. The sustainability of it all is a cherry on top. We are now at a point where it isn't just cool and aspirational. Now we do have to think about how it was made. Who will lose their job over it? Yes. Or whose backs it makes profit? Yes, there are going to be some people that are leadership that make profit off of you. And that, whether you think that's fair or not, then go for management, go for leadership. How will be repaired or recycled if broken? I don't know what that means. How much energy or water it uses, or what rare materials or fine. Oh, you literally meant repaired or recycled. I was thinking that meant something else. Okay. Or what rare metals or finite resources. You can't just delude yourself with this. This fantasy is over. It was never here. This was never a fantasy people took seriously. And that's crazy if you think that this is a Hollywood illusion. This isn't even a tech problem. This is a Hollywood illusion. I feel like some people maybe did have this fantasy and maybe they're frustrated by it. Maybe she's frustrated by it. And I can understand if she has developed this utopia in her mind to be frustrated, because reality is not this. It's not even close. And I can see how you can be really disappointed when you don't get that reality. But man, this is so delusional. What is this? You know what the biggest problem with pushing all things AI is? Wrong direction. I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. Just do your laundry and dishes. Like, so it's a complaint about AI essentially taking over tasks that we didn't expect it to take over. But like, what did you expect? What is this illusion? Like, there's a reason why there was a fear of AI for so long. I don't feel like too many people were delusional about this. Like, AI is going to really challenge the strength of humanity to live in existence, in this new existence with AI. It's going to be extremely challenging and potentially catastrophic. Well, like, I think a lot of us realized how bad this could get. I don't know what you expected, to be honest. But do your damn laundry and dishes, because I don't think you're really going for like high effort things. And I think you're going to feel better about yourself if you put more effort into things. Has the tech world kept up this image, their promise, their goals? No. Even with the AI now and the ads released for Gemini, ChatGPT, and others, they still bank on the Utopia world state they failed to deliver even until now. It's like we're made to believe it is always just out of reach, but the next technological advancement will fix it and finally make it real. I would agree with the selling of, I mean, you're mixing so much, but I would agree with the selling of some convenience. It's like, man, electric or flying cars has been a thing for a very long time. We have expected flying cars for a very long time with a lot of promises until there were breaks with it, and now it's kind of coming back where it might be a little bit more realistic that we maybe get flying cars within the next 10 years, or yeah, it could be way off. But these kind of things are constantly sold to us. I do agree with that. And I mean, you even see this with selling to investors. This happens a lot, but in selling to like trying to create a marketing or like an image for your company, and that your company is the future and that it has dreams in the next 5 to 10 years to create something. I do agree that a lot of like companies and I guess influencers do sell something that is very illogical and detached from reality, or at least happening within the time span that is promised. I do agree with that. But they're lying. Obviously, companies will say and do what brings them the most money. This isn't new or shocker. I don't think they always do that. I think money is a main motivator. But greenwashing is a problem. Making wonderfully diverse ads while internally still discriminating against women, people of color, disabled people, and more is a problem. We 100% agree on this. 2020, the number of companies that literally profited off of marginalized groups was disgusting. And if you would call it out, you're just like, what the fuck is this? Stop using marginalized groups to like sell your damn product. Like, stop it. You're just promoting diversity for the sake of diversity because you know it's popular given a tragic event. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, a lot of us wanted a lot of these companies to just shut the fuck up and stop using diversity to sell their products. Like, this is one thing I think like progressives and conservatives can come together on for sure. Like, this has happened way too often, and I don't know what to tell you. Like, I feel like I'm kind of being condescending and arrogant by saying this, but myself and a lot of people like me saw this coming. Of course we did. And anytime we would speak up about it, like, we just weren't empathetic. We weren't part of the LGBT or something like that. Anything we would challenge that is being sold within a certain group because of the way that it's being introduced and being pushed and shoved and forced onto people and making companies a lot of money. Like, I was that person trying to fight back, and people like me, like, just, you know, we just got labeled in the tech community. This is something that needed to be pushed back on. Yes, we saw this coming. More people, even progressives, should have stood up against this, but okay, here we are. Claiming you care about progress, innovation, and talent, but supporting anti-immigration policies is a problem. I think our immigration policies are pretty strict in the US. But again, this is like more just generic speak. We would have to dig into the details, where like we've had a very, very bad illegal immigrant problem recently. You don't even have to guess what country I'm talking about when I say we. Like, and whenever you would even challenge that, you're labeled as someone that doesn't support more generous immigration policies. The problem is kind of like just, what would you call it? Like black labeling, and just like giving people negative labels anytime they would challenge a broken progressive movement or progressive policies. Like, you know, people like that would always get labeled as like right wing and just not empathetic and racist and xenophobic. And it's like, the more you call people that are challenging these policies, like the more you call people those labels when they're challenging policies that long-term are going to hurt progressive causes, the more you push people out of the left. You see what happens there? Do you see what happened in 2024? We'll keep going. Presenting your products as a solution for systemic issues that you help facilitate by your voting and your wages and political donations or endorsements is disgusting. And so is using marketing to curate an image of caring, careful, fair pay, progressive, and ecological company while union busting. Regularly, first of all, I'm not going to get into it with the unions. We're just going to keep going. Regularly losing your data or misusing it, forcing RTO, and pushing for deregulation. Oh my God, you pair so much together. Okay, we got to break this down a bit. Not all unions are good. And I would argue that unions are a large reason why a lot of the mills have had some revenue problems over several years. I think fighting for fair compensation, for fair working conditions, I think what unions originally were fighting, there's a lot of great progress that can come from still fighting those fights. But the problem comes with you kind of just like saying something like union busting. So I've never heard of the term union busting, but I'm assuming it's to deassemble unions, right? I don't think all unions are good. And I've seen unions take down companies. And even just like the negotiations and the standoffs hurt the companies severely, which then hurts the workers, which then gets workers laid off. It's like there's not like a perfect solution of like all unions are good and we shouldn't touch them or challenge them in any way. We shouldn't disassemble them. Like we should always support these. Like I think some people are just like, you either support unions or you don't. You're either progressive or you're conservative because you choose one or the other. And it's always black and white. There's so much more nuance in it. Forcing RTO, I don't know what to tell you. This goes back to humanity. Most humans aren't productive at home. We create these this is just psychology. Like this is like, and people have this black and white stance, like everyone should just work remotely and the company should do just fine. And if the company isn't doing fine, it's because they have shitty leadership. Most leaders don't know how the fuck to like keep this company in a productive state, building up the revenue, especially during really shitty markets, and keep a positive culture, a cohesive culture with everyone remote. Most people can't do that. So you might get like one or two companies that tout like, oh yeah, we're all remote, or you'll get kind of a small size chunk of companies that will promote this. But this is the exception, not the rule. We can argue that we should push to be able to educate leadership leaders within companies to be able to manage teams remotely, but we are a long way off. You should fully expect a return to office, because the only reason you got fully remote was because of the pandemic and because of negotiation. Like the employees had more of a negotiation stance, especially with a lot of office jobs, and to compete, companies had to do that. And that might seem superficial, but when the market gets rough and leadership is realizing that a lot of people aren't productive, because again, we're going to go into this. When you are at home, you create patterns of thinking, right? You have environment cues where you aren't as productive because you are used to relaxing at home. So you create these patterns, and most people don't even have these extra rooms to be able to create this separate environment, or even a room for a desk to be able to just zone in and create this pattern of thinking that starts making you productive and ready to work. And the problem is a lot of people that were working remote weren't forming meaningful connections with people at work. It was just with people at home. And so those relationships weren't getting strengthened as much, but also they were having trouble juggling, they were having trouble, I need to slow down. They were having trouble stopping work and going into their leisure time. It would blend too much, and the stress was starting to build up. When you go to an office, you start developing a switch, and this is a real thing that helps people. Now, commutes suck, and that's the big argument against remote, I think. Long commutes suck, and I would agree with that. But like, to even criticize forcing RTO, like, again, this is just delusional thinking that you think companies should have like stuck with return to office. A lot of people didn't even enforce it. It's like some people would get the privilege of just not getting promotional salaries or paid the same that people that would go into the office were. Now you can argue that's unfair, but like, it wasn't all forcing RTO. It was companies, and quite frankly, they should have forced it. All companies should have forced it that needed to, that noticed that were truly struggling, and that foresaw layoffs if they didn't do this. Like, they should have forced it, but not enough companies did it. So I don't agree with that at all. That like, you're not saying like all companies forced it, but I think more companies should have forced it, because we got into these middle grounds where like eventually the company just started laying people off because it just couldn't afford to keep up with how they structured things. When revenue is flowing, you could start giving people privileges like that. That's what happens when you have a surplus of revenue. I just think people are too short-sighted, and I think more people need to understand, like at least pay attention to what happened in the past 4 years to just be aware of this. I think some employees kind of just like go to work and they just tune out, and they don't really pay attention to what's happening financially with the company, politically with the company. They don't understand what's happening with the market. Some people just tune this stuff out, and they're just not self-aware. And so now they're kind of forced to be laid off or fired last minute. And that's when this really screws people over. But when you understand that this is a normal thing with companies, and of course they are going to try to push for as much as they possibly can and still keep their employees with a bottom line of revenue. But you understand that going into a business, working for a business, then you can prepare for this, and you start focusing on career security rather than job security. Yeah, we're going to move on. I want to have a closer look on some tech companies and VC lobbying, their values, endorsements, and political or environmental consequences. Meta, owner of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, blah, blah, blah. We know who Mark Zuckerberg is. Well known for election misinformation. Dude, hold on. I have to look into this. I don't care about your specific issue. I'm not going to dig into any specific issue, but I do want to... Facebook ads elect. So this is 2024. This is what is just, okay, I'm not paying. Stop linking stuff that I have to pay for. What? Did you really? Hold on. Did I really just get paywalled into your source that you're trying to provide? Seriously? You're trying to promote free education and you just linked me to a paywalled resource. So Zuckerberg was accused of election misinformation or like withholding certain information going into 2020. A lot of conservatives complained about this. And then progressives complained about it after Zuckerberg made the comment that, you know, like it was badass, that Trump was like, you know, fists in the air with a flag, which it was badass, by the way. And it actually humanized him a bit. Like, I think like both progressives and conservatives thought that was awesome, but I think a lot of progressives took that like, oh, now Meta is all about conservatives and now they're going to provide election misinformation that promotes conservatives because the CEO said something like that. It's like, I think both conservatives and progressives find these like little threads and just unwind them into something that into their own narrative, that they already believe something. And they're just like, they're looking for these little threads that they're trying to pick to back up their claims that their side is being suppressed. This has happened both with conservatives and progressives. And I'm guessing we're going to see quite a bit of that with different CEOs. But you know what the solution is? Free speech, transparency with the algorithms. That's it. That's the solution. It's a really easy solution. But then I have a feeling that your hate speech threshold is probably going to be triggered a little bit too soon, and you're not going to like that all of a sudden. ByteDance, TikTok. Distrust because of Chinese national intelligence and ability for China to shape public opinion elsewhere by the powerful nation, and was involved in controversies around censorship. What's the point of listing these endorsements? Values, endorsements, and political or environmental consequences. I don't think this like says a. What's the point of listing these? I'll read a couple more. As previously mentioned in the footnotes, there's a union busting, which effectively means being hostile to fair and livable wages. I need to look into union busting a little bit more because I have a feeling you probably back up most unions and let quite a bit slide. I've seen so many managers treated like shit, like just completely treated like shit, and employees that just don't do jack shit on the floor, especially like in the mills. A lot of employees are extremely lazy in the mills in Northwest Indiana. And like you hear about it all the time, and you literally are shunned for for having a good work ethic and constantly working. You are shunned for it. You are ostracized for it by other union members who know what they can get away with. People are going to get away with as much as they possibly can. A lot of people are. A lot of people don't have good work ethic, but they're going to get away with doing as little as they possibly can to be able to satisfy the requirements of just getting a check. Like, unions protect people like that way too often. That is the problem. There are problems with unions. Maybe there are reasons why certain unions are disassembled. I would imagine it's a very costly affair to do that, but I get a feeling like this person is just all pro-union. We've all heard of the Amazon warehouse horror stories or Amazon Drive, and these are legitimate stories. Like, when we hear about these warehouse stories, there are workforces, there are companies or teams within companies that do need people to fight for them. This is true. But I think we got to be very careful about just generalizing union busting. There are unions that need to get destroyed, and I would argue, where I come from, those unions need to get destroyed. Alphabet, political censorship, especially in regards to China, Turkey, Russia, bad working conditions and handling. They also ran an anti-union campaign. There's probably quite a bit. I want to dig into X. Is obviously because Google has quite a bit of a history. X is obviously by now very associated with Elon Musk and his personal brand views that most people are very aware of, so I won't get too deeply into it. He created a super PAC to support Donald Trump. He went pretty ham with Donald Trump. That was a bit weird to me, to be honest. For a CEO of Twitter or X or whatever to do that, I think that was inappropriate. And I get people's frustrations with Elon. Since 2021, he has donated exclusively to Republicans. His companies are well, who cares about that? Like, give me relevance to that, right? Zuckerberg, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars did he donate to Democratic institutions? Like, is your argument to just prevent? Because I don't see anything about like challenging progressive tech leaders or people that were progressive at that time and donating. Like, it just seems like you're just shitting on Republicans and conservatives, which just makes me think that you're in an echo chamber. This feels very biased. So I feel like you're kind of right in some of your concerns with your views, but you're very, very biased with it. And that shows very clearly in this article. And this is where you kind of lose respect among most people, where you're either just preaching to an echo chamber, which they already believe this, and they're essentially wasting their time reading this. Maybe they do it to make themselves feel better and validate some of their opinions, but like you're not bringing people middle of the road to your side by doing this. You're just showing your bias and you lose respect for it. I have no idea who this is. I don't care. I want to kind of move on. This is just a selection. I'm writing a casual blog post after all, not a book. There's surely more to dig up and more companies to talk about. Yes, there have been notable efforts to ease the negative effects these companies have or use their money for good, but it is not enough. And there is a worrying trend in tech veering strongly to the right and using the money they get from us and our data for questionable causes. I like, again, you're saying some things that are right, but you are very good. You're very good at pushing people away that are middle of the road, that might be more open to taking action in the capacity that they can to fight this cause with you. And this is where I would be very careful when you do like push for a very strong political leaning, which you are. You seem very progressive. Again, you kind of just preach to this echo chamber. You don't really sway people in the middle, and you just, again, validate opinions on the right. And like, you are like, I'm not going to go over some of the opinions that conservatives might think, but like, I'm sure you could guess. But you're just validating that they can't trust your opinion, or that you're even open to getting out of your echo chamber, which I think is the bigger concern. And how is this in alignment with tech's lofty, amazing, soundly goals and marketing image? The solution cannot be just to throw more tech at it. I have a bit to say. I want to read this last paragraph. The point of this is all to say the tech utopia fantasy is truly dead to me. The image of cool, hippie, leftist Silicon Valley tech. Wow. Tech is wrong. The companies themselves and the VCs they take money from are supporting values and governments that do not act in their best interests and do not even align with their marketing image. Don't be further misled. Stop giving them your money, time, and data as much as possible for you. They won't bring us closer to these ideals, they promise. Okay. Oh, you didn't get a paywall? Oh, no. You're validating. Never mind. Sorry, I'm reading my chat. Okay. Yeah. Paywall for thee, not for me. Here's the problem. So, given my comments, you might not believe this. I am, like, I'll just say I am definitely an independent. I would argue that if I had to lean towards a party, it's probably a little bit more libertarian, because I guess we'll get a little bit political here, but I lean a little bit more libertarian. I'm very anti-authoritarian. And that just comes from my upbringing, my childhood, and using that perception to be able to try to figure out what's going on in the world. And right, so I have my biases. And so I really try to stay away from anything that's going to influence more, like a lot, excessive power to institutions where a lot of people will give blind trust to. And so one thing that I can get on board with you is that I do think that a lot of these first of all, I don't know if this is a point you made, but I think a lot of these larger tech companies, even if they side with your political beliefs, aren't on your side. They don't have your best interests at heart. And I think sometimes people tend to get attached to leaders of these companies based off of their political leanings, thinking like, oh, he's one of us. And I think that's very far from the truth. And like, I think Elon Musk is a really good example. There are things that I like that he's doing, but there's a lot of understandable distrust in his recent few years. And he might turn out to, how do I want to say this? He might turn out, I think if you watch him closely, we'll just point this out. I think if you watch him closely, I don't think he's for free speech. I think he's for more free speech than what X previously allowed. But I don't think his political beliefs are him like going with a populist vote and being for the people. I think it is self-interest. And I think a lot of tech leaders have a lot of self-interest. You can argue that maybe the companies are taking money from supporting governments that actually don't align with those values. And that's one thing. That's a whole other conversation. But I do think that a lot of people need to be very careful about aligning themselves with tech leaders and thinking like he's one of us. I think that's very far from the truth. And I think we have a huge class problem that needs to be solved. And a lot of these large tech companies, I think, contribute negatively to creating more of a divide with this class system. And now I think there are many pieces to creating more of a divide, but I don't think a lot of these tech leaders and tech giants are for your interests, which I highly recommend supporting smaller companies when your values align. So I think the other side of this is that you live in your own echo chamber, in your own bubble, and that you kind of have this vision of this, and you just make it very clear what you want tech to be. Tech is, so you live in this dreamy bubble where you are just some hipster, maybe on a rooftop, recording a YouTube video of your life in the Silicon Valley tech, right? I think Hollywood has portrayed this image, less so tech leaders, more so Hollywood. But you want this leftist Silicon Valley tech when tech is supposed to support a variety of opinions. Tech is about diversity of opinions. If we want to progress technology, we need a diversity of opinions. But all you are doing is support as generic leftist opinions, and you are just shitting on conservative opinions. Like you've made that very clear. And this is the problem with tech, and this is why you're getting so much pushback, is because you want to create an echo chamber of everyone that you agree with, and you don't want to be challenged on that. And if you are challenged on that, or if people have different interests than you, then that doesn't sit well with you. You had this dreamy, quite frankly, lazy, low effort, unrealistic vision of tech that was never going to happen long term. It's never sustainable because Silicon Valley is built up in a capitalist market. And good for the capitalist market to be able to give these people these opportunities. But I think a lot of leftists are incredibly clueless about some of the policies that they support that don't quite line up, especially economic policies that don't quite line up with their dreamy vision of being able to sit comfortably, be a cool hippie, playing ping pong in some leftist tech team that capitalism has provided. Capitalism has provided a lot of the opportunities that would create your dream, but you are so incredibly against this. There is a double-edged sword with a lot of these companies being able to hire employees and push out higher salaries and allow them to have more spending money to push out into the market. Like, we could dive into kind of the flow of capitalism, but this leftist hippie idealist version of Silicon Valley and tech where nothing bad happens, everyone agrees with each other. They're like there are you essentially want like all cultures to blend in, because some cultures will conflict with each other, so which you probably just label as xenophobic all the time. Like humans are going to disagree, cultures are going to conflict. Technology can bring us together and provide a lot of free education, but you want none of the negatives that come with it. I just feel like your entire article was talking about your dreamy vision. It's like people that just promote like free healthcare for all and this, it's late. I'm losing all of my terminology, or like universal basic income, or to be able to control, like to be able to control the world in a way that makes you feel more secure in your own country by being completely oblivious to where all that money comes from and the negative consequences of pulling that much tax funds in and pushing it into a lot of your, like, to support a lot of your policies. That there are just so many leftist ideals that just aren't realistic. There just aren't. And to try to have this dreamy vision of tech, which I see, like, you see this on Blue Sky a lot, like a lot of anti-capitalism. And they have exactly this vision, like you probably are in Blue Sky. They have this vision of Silicon Valley and tech, but they want to snuff out any dissenting opinion. They don't want a diversity of opinion. They only want people that agree with them. And they think that is going to progress tech. And they completely neglect the capitalism and the variety of opinions, the diversity of opinions, both on the right and the left, that have provided you at least somewhat of a progressive tech. People get too idealistic, and they just, the internet is their soapbox, and they wish everything was just perfect and there were no negatives to any of their policies. Like all of their policies, even though they have a lot of negatives in their dream, they just don't have them. This goes towards conservatives too. And I'm only talking about progressives and conservatives because you really highlighted that quite a bit. But I do think that is a very popular topic in tech right now. And I've noticed that there are like a lot of the progressive idealists that want tech to be a certain way are starting to completely destroy the very vision that they want. They're pushing tech further and further away from that. And that's because capitalism has created at least somewhat of this utopia for you. And believe it or not, you are trying to crush capitalism in a lot of your decisions. It's, again, like, why do you think so many people have pushed back in tech specifically, on how left-leaning a lot of progressives have become? It's idealistic, and it fucks over a lot of people. It puts you on a pedestal. You're preaching to people like no one respects you. The only people that respect you are in your own echo chamber. You obviously don't want dissenting opinion. You're the type of person that is ruining tech. That's my opinion about it. But anyways, that's the video. This is a pretty long video, so let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want, we can go over this topic in more detail. We can talk about it a bit more. Let me know.